We will be recording this event so that we can share it with all our lovely Wazoo students who weren't able to attend today and want access to this information. I do want to say I'm Adrian. I'm a student ambassador at WSU Global Campus. I work with Global Connections to bring events like this and a bunch of other lovely events that we offer. I do want to thank Rebecca and Dolan, our IT specialists, for joining us and for giving this presentation. They are from the Crimson Service Desk. They help us out very much, and I will read off their presenter information. Rebecca Solon is a WSU information security analyst with a background in ethical hacking, digital forensics, programming, and security awareness. Her experience in the various realms of information security industry includes military, corporate, and education. When not dealing with computers, she collects Legos and makes various baked goods for fun. Sounds fun. I love it. And Dolan works for the WSU ITS Crimson Service Desk and brings to the role nearly a decade of technical experience. His expertise spans diverse areas such as high performance computing systems, expert, expert technical troubleshooting, and network security. Recently, Dolan was part of a team who took first place in a local golfing association tournament. How cool! I love that.
Thanks.
And now I would like to hand off the reins to Dolan and Rebecca, but I will say that if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. And at the end, I'll read off the questions and Rebecca and Dolan can look over them and answer them. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the intro. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend our presentation on a topic that I believe to be absolutely critical, not only within the context of the higher education system, but also worldwide, considering the impact of technology in every realm. Our presentation this evening is titled The Art of Digital Defense, because I think you'll find that as we go through the slides, you'll start to discover just how many facets and nuances there are to keeping yourself safe as you navigate the online world. And I don't mean this to scare you away from the topic, quite the contrary. As you take your own security into account on a regular basis, it becomes habitual, like a healthy skepticism or a healthy paranoia of what is constantly placed on your screen by other people. So the goal for this evening is to arm you with the tools to accomplish what we stated in the subtitle, dodging the bad stuff, because the alternative is not fun. So let's take a look at what we're going to address.
All right, here's a quick little agenda for us. I've got a short disclaimer, then we're going to go into why IT security is so important, and then go over some of the key topics: social engineering, passwords, multi-factor authentication, phishing and spam, malware, physical security, backup of data, surfing above the danger. This is just a general topic for anything that you're going to be doing on the web, how to protect yourself and make sure that you're staying safe. Then at the end, we have time for some questions.
Perfect. So before we dive into the content within this whole realm of information security, we do have a couple of disclaimers we want to put in place. And this might seem a bit strange, but it's important that you understand these two items. The first is that the information we're providing to you this evening is still quite a broad overview of this topic. Information security as a whole encompasses numerous specific areas. Many presentations, could be made from these specifics, but our intent is to give you the information on the most important topics that are going to raise your personal security level. In addition, our knowledge on these topics is not limitless. As technology changes and attackers shift their tactics, maintaining security awareness, it requires a proactive effort. Secondly, it is important that wherever you may be in the country or the world, that you keep in mind the laws governing the jurisdiction where you are. Some countries don't allow certain personal security measures, such as encryption. Some have even outlawed exportation of encryption programs. So stay mindful of your local laws and you should be fine. All right, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So the why of this slide kind of has a, I guess, a rhetorical nature to it for some people. For anyone that's been exposed to the internet, there's this general idea of the consequences of poor safety practices online. Generally speaking, the known consequences are enough motivation to pay a little attention to what is going on, but many people still engage in some risky actions, believing they'll be okay because they have the recommended technical safeguards. Well, the actions that users engage in, they have an impact, okay? A few examples of the consequences of poor security practices, like we have listed here. They can be like identity theft, financial loss, increased stress, having to spend and dedicate time to correct the outcomes of these. This is not a comprehensive list by any means, but you get the general idea. None of these items on this list are things that users want to deal with, and nor should anyone need to. Unfortunately, ignorance of dangers doesn't protect anyone. So the attackers are becoming very efficient and skilled at what they do. So should you. Every user account on the network is a potential vector for attackers to find their way in. You are a network user, and that privilege comes with a measure of responsibility, not only to yourself, but also to the other users on the network. In general, I believe there's like a generic assumption that information security is an isolated effort handled entirely by a team that keeps everything safe, keeps out all the bad by doing some sort of technical wizardry that most won't understand. Users expect these technical safeguards will do the job, and they go about their online business with this confidence that everything's been handled. Well, according to the 2023 Data Breach Investigations report from Verizon, 74% of cybersecurity breaches can be traced in some way to human error. 74%, that is huge. Now, while the computer realm's largely a technical domain, we need to keep in mind that computers also have a human element involved. In fact, people in security, like me, often recognize that humans are the weakest link in so many layers of security. And that's precisely why the very first specific topic we're going to discuss tonight is social engineering.
All right, so the human element, social engineering. Social engineering, by definition, is the use of deception and manipulation or influence of an individual to steer decision-making into a desired outcome. For this, the context of it for information security, it is ultimately used to steal control, information, or money. So social engineering gets its backbone from psychology. It's the way the brain works and how to try and manipulate you into acting off of urgency, acting out of fear, or if it's somebody that you think you know, that's a trust factor. So just a couple of things that you want to keep a lookout for. Trust, you may see familiar faces or anything. That's a major way that people can try and pry at you to try and get you to act in their way. So urgency, the sense of alarm or criticality to encourage someone to act without thinking or through reaction. This could be if you get a message from somebody saying a message from a family member saying that they're in an emergency, they can't get access to a flight home, they need you to send them some money. That's they want you to act quick and want you to go along with what they're saying. And then fear, threatening negative actions to you. This one can be if somebody is threatening to steal all your data on your computer, that's trying to get you to go again with them. The thought of losing all your data, the thought of losing family pictures or anything like that, they want you to act out of fear so they can get your information. And then how to minimize effects of social engineering. Number one, be skeptical. Do not blindly trust a person as who they say they are. Like I was saying, you could get a message from your family member, or you think it's your family member. Be cautious whenever you see this, if it's ever questionable. If you get friend requests from people you don't know or anything like that, just got to be skeptical. Be alert, recognize signs of pressure in form of undue urgency or fear. Like I was saying previously, this is if they're trying to get you to act quick as possible, say they need this done immediately, then that can trick your brain into thinking of going along with them. And then be suspicious and trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. One of the major things here is, again, if it's like a family member reaching out to you, if it's urgent or anything, give them a call. See if it's actually them. If it's urgent, most likely they'll answer a call. So just trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, then it's probably not right.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you see so much of the social engineering nowadays and how a lot of these attackers, how they work. It doesn't take a whole lot for them to advance their skill level at social engineering. It doesn't require a whole ton of practice. A lot of it is just paying close attention to like physical, written, or verbal cues that people place in their communication. And they read those signs and signals, they react accordingly. That's like the hallmarks of this whole technique. Human beings have like statistically predictable emotional responses. It doesn't take too long to learn how people are going to react to situations, which is why they leverage this so often. And something I found kind of fascinating that I wanted to throw in to this is that there's actually a whole field of study that focuses specifically on human behavior and decision making called behavioral economics. And of course, it talks all about the insights about how individual human perception influences our decisions. And it's really quite fascinating. But anyway, that's a full topic for yet another time. We'll move on. So let's talk passwords. The original computer security gatekeeper, as far back as like the early 1960s, when computers were slow and resources were shared, they needed a method to control time sharing and access to individual files on a mainframe at MIT. And of course, they solved this issue by using passwords. Everybody was issued a password, and so then people could log in for the time that they were scheduled. Of course, now, decades later, after that, in our current security model, the password is essentially still the primary gate that protects information and computing resources, which also makes passwords the primary target for attackers. So recommendations for a strong password are simple, and we repeat these every time we refer to password security. Use a long and complex password. If you need less complexity, then make it as long as possible. If you're limited to a smaller number of characters, make it much more complex. If you have an option for both, it's better to use both. Looking at this chart here on this slide, you can kind of see just how long it would take, depending upon how complex the password is, how long it would take to crack that. All right. There are a lot of other variables taken consideration. I get that. This is all based on mathematics, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but the general idea, it remains the same. Don't use simple passwords, right? Unfortunately, the most common password that gets cracked consistently almost every single year is the word password. Please don't do something like that. It's always among the first passwords guessed. The next point, just as important, use a unique password for every account. If you use the same password for every account you own, it becomes incredibly simple for someone to take over everything. If I were thinking in the mind of an attacker and I got a password, I would take that username and password and try it everywhere I could. Most everyone has an Amazon account, a Facebook account, an Instagram account, certainly free email account providers. And say, for example, they were to get access to one of your email accounts. Well, now they could pass some multi-factor authentication for other accounts, which just makes it all easier to kind of cascade from there, right? Don't make the mistake of using the same password for everything or even for a handful of accounts. Every account, unique password, right? And of course, if you're like me and probably everyone else, you probably have hundreds of accounts, maybe more. Memorizing every password would be an impossible task for anyone if you have different passwords for every account. So we recommend that you use a password manager. There are an awful lot of options out there that are good. Most have the ability to sync with the app on your phone, so you always have access to your passwords. In addition, they have helpful functions that will help you make stronger passwords, which is definitely useful. By using a password manager, you only need to remember one complicated password to access all of the others. And that master password needs to be really safeguarded. Okay? If you have to write it down, store it someplace secure. Passwords will only get you so far because we've learned that having just one access gate can leave things really vulnerable. So now more accounts are implementing additional methods to ensure you are who you claim to be.
Those additional methods was multi-factor authentication, or MFA. MFA, multi-factor authentication, is something that you know, like your password or PIN number, something that you have, like a device that you can plug into your computer and it has a key on it, or something that you are, which it could be like biometrics, an iris scan, thumbprint, anything like that. It is far more secure than relying solely on just the password, because this requires user input from the main user itself. So if you just have your password, and if somebody gets a hold of your password, they can send, it'll trigger the MFA to go off. And a lot of times we use Okta Verify or Google Authenticator, and that's a timed code that we would have to enter that is only set to our phones or our devices. So way more secure than just using a password or anything like that. And for WSU, MFA is not optional. You are required to use some sort of multi-factor authentication to access all WSU applications. There are more and more services that are getting behind that as we speak. One thing is with multi-factor authentication is multi-factor MFA fatigue. This would be if somebody gets your password and they try logging into your account, it'll send a ping to your phone or a ping somewhere to one of your devices, and it will ask you to approve or deny this access. Now, if you don't know what it is, you click no, but if they keep pinging that same password, that same MFA trying to log into your account, that's where a lot of people can fall victim, and just one accidental press of yes, this is me can grant the hacker access to your account, all your information, and it's just downhill from there. So it's one thing to keep an eye out for that not a lot of people think about. So
definitely important. And we did see a number of these kind of compromises in the past. We are working on many different ways to protect multi-factor authentication to keep these sorts of things from happening. In general, best bet is just awareness. If somebody is attempting to repeatedly get MFA codes, report it to abuse@wsu.edu, or also talk to the Crimson Service Desk. Either way, we can help put a stop to it. So now that we've kind of gone through the discussion about accessing accounts, we want to shift our approach a little bit, start discussing a little bit more of the common threats you're likely to encounter. First is the most common thing you're going to encounter with a WSU account: phishing and spam. The IT staff here at WSU, we do an awful lot of work to block spam and phishing emails. In fact, we block millions of them every year, and the trouble is some still get through. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as it might seem, and the tactics used to get by our filters are constantly changing. So it is an unfortunate fact you are going to receive phishing and spam emails in your inbox. And in this case, the best defense against these is user awareness, why we're here. So first, I want to start with some definitions. Spam. Email sent in bulk to wholesale email lists, generally for commercial activity. So examples of these, like questionable pharmaceutical products or your car's extended warranty, the things that everyone hates receiving in their inbox. For spam, essentially money is the motivation, and typically maliciousness is not their first consideration, but it's also not out of the question. So when you think about it, destruction of property belonging to a potential customer kind of has a negative effect on sales. All right, switching over to phishing. Email that generally uses fraudulent means to appear reputable and legitimate in order to achieve some malicious goal. And of course, that goal could be many different things. Maybe it's to get you to click on a specific link or open an attachment that's in the email or give away information. All right, the bottom line is that there is just a very fine border between the two of these, and the senders of both, they likely don't think twice before crossing that definitional line. Right, so both of these are going to use social engineering to manipulate decision-making by appealing to fear, trust, other emotions, like Dolan mentioned earlier. Some of these emotions, you may not even be aware that you're being manipulated. Okay, phishing is especially dangerous. It usually is the first interaction in order to get the recipient to, like I said, open attachments or give away usernames and passwords into fake login pages or begin interaction with scams. So what I wanted to do is give you some examples to show you actual phishing emails that have been received. So this one here that you're looking at right now, This is the most common type of phishing email that presently plagues WSU inboxes. Internally, we like to call it the fake job scam because that is precisely what it is. Doesn't matter what the title of the job is, it's a fake job. Okay, and the scammers, they know that college students, they want a simple job that pays well and can be done from the comforts of their sofa. Well, this isn't it. All right, let's take a look at the individual components. First, let's look at the subject line right up here. Some all caps, some lowercase. It resembles what would happen to kind of if someone had several keyword lists and a script that took those entries on that list and dropped them into a field and then sent the email out. Okay, the attacker is going to use whatever job title sounds good. I've seen them use internship, assistant, bookkeeper, data entry, kind of like what you see right here. You know, whatever they think will get you to pause and continue reading. All right, and then of course, in addition, looking at that subject, it doesn't really make sense. All right, so red flag number one. Next, let's take a look at the sender right here. All right, in the name field, they've placed the title of Dr. Ronell Graham. Now they know their audience in this particular case is college students. That's who they targeted for this campaign. Who exudes authority in student lives on a regular basis? Well, professors. All right, so make definitive note that the sender email address is actually, if you look closely here, a Gmail account. Another red flag. All right. In addition, I blacked out the field of who received it just for the sake of privacy, but it was a lot of recipients. So yet another red flag. All right, let's take a look at the body of the email. All right, you look at the grammar and such. You know, my high school English teachers would probably hyperventilate reading through this. You know, kind of like somebody took a bowl of SpaghettiOs, shook it up, and lobbed it at the computer screen. And I admit I'm not perfect at grammar and punctuation either. My kids laugh at me when I work extra hard to maintain perfect grammar in text messages and such, complete with capitalization. Anyway, neither here nor there. On its own, bad grammar and punctuation is not an automatic signal that it's phishing. So please keep that in mind. But in a professional environment, it should raise suspicion. All right, so yet another red flag. The attacker, they're always going to use terms that get your attention. And of course, you can count how many times they use these different terms. You read through this. Did they mention the job was remote? If you look through here, I think it's in there 5 times, 6 times. Anyway, if you go down to the very bottom, you look where it has the name that signs off. You'll notice the names don't match. Right, so yet another red flag. And of course, by now, all of these warning sirens should be going off in your head. If you were to fall for this scam, let me explain what would happen next. So the scammer would likely promise to send you a check, and they will. Make no mistake, they will send you a physical check, and they will instruct you that your first task is to deposit the check into your own account, and then immediately transfer some of the funds, keeping some smaller amount for yourself as pay or something, to another account. Okay, this all sounds really simple, right? Well, here's the deal. When you deposit that check, the bank is going to honor it on good faith, and they're going to deposit the funds. And then if you go ahead and you complete the second transaction, so the transfer of funds someplace else from your account, immediately it will look like you made money on this task until a couple of days later when the validation of that check comes back as bad and the bank reverses the deposit. Okay, it takes about 48 hours to validate a check and make sure that it's good, especially a physical check. Okay, so because the transfer of your money, the one you initiated, was valid and was completed, you not only lose the deposit because of the bad check, but you also lose the money on the transfer, and it is not reversible. Okay, your money is gone, and the scammer likely will not respond to you. They will disappear. All right. Looking at it right now in this context, with all of the red flags that we've been talking about and all the sirens going off in your head, it becomes difficult to believe that anyone would fall for this, right? Unfortunately, people fall for it constantly. Last Friday, it was actually reported to me that a student transferred over $2,000 to a scammer. In another case, a student resorted to having to take out a bank loan to pay rent when they lost over $800 to a scammer. Please do not underestimate the ability of scammers to manipulate your emotions. As we said before, they will mess with trust, they'll mess with fear, guilt, urgency, anything they can do to force you out of an analytical mindset. Don't fall for it. Right? Attackers are becoming experts at communication behavior, and they are engineering these optimal conditions for people to make mistakes, and that's what they're counting on. All right, let's look at another one. So this one, we'll call this the email verification scam. So the subject line, big capital letters, I think everyone can see it right there. Action required. You know, it's like oozing urgency, like your keyboard's going to melt if you don't open it right away. All right, with this one, make note of the we're going to make note of all the emotions that are used while we go through this. Okay, so we already have urgency, likely denotes, I suppose, fear. If you don't, you know, action required. All right. The sender address next is kind of interesting. You'll notice that here at the end is wsu.edu. It appears like it came from a WSU account. Well, in this case, it did. So this campaign was started and sent out from a compromised WSU email account. And it was later determined that the student actually fell victim to the MFA fatigue attack that we talked about earlier. So that's kind of why we set that up kind of at the beginning, so you would understand and see what happens, you know, when a compromised account happens, all right? So anyway, this emotion here, this would be trust, right? After all, WSU email account provides trust. So that's what they're counting on. They send it from WSU email account, and hopefully you'll believe it even more. All right, bumped it, sorry. Let's take a look at the body of the email. Dear user, kind of generic, right? Okay, this is to notify all students and staff of Washington State University that we are validating active accounts. Kindly confirm that your account is still in use. Copy and paste the URL below into the address bar of your web browser. Well, first of all, the very nature of this should make you suspicious. Okay, we don't validate accounts by asking users to do it for us. We have access to all account validity information without any user interaction. And I should say, in some cases, this email, the attacker would actually threaten to terminate your account in 24 hours if you don't, you know, validate it. So in this case, I classify this one as fear and urgency, depending on how you perceive it. Okay, and of course, secondary to all of this, grammar and punctuation stickler here, it looks terrible. But if you're already in emotional reaction mode, you're probably not going to make note of it. You probably missed that part because you're already in that elevated state, wondering, oh, what just happened to my account? All right. Another note to this, let's take a look at the link. And we are going to get into URLs a little more later on, so I'm not going to go too deep. But if you look at the domain, it's not wsu.edu. The domain here is actually ukit.me, which when we actually investigated this, it was a free website host in Russia. So again, more things to raise suspicion. All right, and of course, this last part, which I thought was kind of humorous, where it says sincerely with an exclamation point on it. You know, they're brimming with so much sincerity, it required an exclamation. Kind of an odd attempt at trust, I suppose. Of course, they signed it with IT Help Desk, which, you know, most people are aware right now at Washington State University. The help desk at WSU is Crimson Service Desk, not IT Help Desk. So again, just little things, little red flags, but essentially the whole signature line is an attempt at trust, right? So between trust, between fear, the urgency, they play all these things off of each other and hope that you're going to fall for it. Of course, how does this work? All right, so if you, let's say, for example, you were to take that domain, that address right there, the URL, and you drop that into your browser. This one's pretty simple. You enter it in, it's going to take you to what looks like a WSU login page, but it's fake. It's being hosted on that free hosting site, all right? You'll enter a username and password, and it will promptly send those to the attacker. So it's important to understand it only takes less than a minute to completely replicate any login page. There are scripts that can do it. The changes to weaponize it take a matter of mere minutes. In all, they are going to take this little bit of time to create that page for a really big payoff. They're going to get lists of usernames and passwords, okay? What will then happen, of course, is they're going to be challenged by MFA. Well, we already know what happens if they can challenge MFA over and over again, MFA fatigue. So it doesn't require that everybody falls for it. They only need a few people to fall for it. And so that's why this campaign continues to get recycled over and over again, all right? what kind of things can we do about these emails? Well, first thing, most importantly, slow down. Okay, that's the biggest piece of advice I can give you. Just slow down. Remember that the attackers, they want you to move fast. They want you to not consider what it is that you're interacting with. When you see these sorts of emails, ask yourself lots of questions about what you're seeing. I put some examples here on the slide, where you're paying attention to the clues. Is the sender and or the URL familiar to you? Is it from an official source? Right? Remember that sender addresses can be faked and links can be tricky. So if you're suspicious of something, you need to dig deeper. For example, were you expecting this email? Does the email make sense? Is the grammar and spelling beyond bad? Does it match the writing and tone of the sender? That's if you know the claimed sender. We've had impersonations happen as well. Is it too good to be true? That's a big one. If you're being offered something, say they claim that you won millions of dollars, is it too good to be true? Well, yeah. Right? Is it playing your emotions to get you to act swiftly? You will see these examples. There are multiple variations of these types of emails that come through, and these aren't the only types. There are going to be other types of phishing emails. In general, as long as you're paying attention to where it came from, the little red flags that should be going off when you look at these in detail, generally speaking, you should be able to spot them. Right. So at the very bottom there, if you've got something suspicious, please report it to abuse@wsu.edu. That's the address that goes to my team where we investigate all of these. We pick them apart. We're able to block senders. We can block URLs. All of those things is very important that we be able to see those and understand what kind of campaigns that we are facing. Right? So let's kind of move on to the next step of things that you may end up facing: malware.
So this is prevalent. A lot of malware can come from some of those spam emails. Malware is just a word mashup of malicious software. There are numerous different types of malware that can infect a system, infect multiple systems. They will get into that in a little bit on the next slide. Some activities that increase exposure to malware. These would be interactions with malicious ads, pop-ups, or compromised websites. This could be you're browsing on Facebook or Instagram, and you see a pop-up and it says, "Ooh, try this new product for us. We'll send you a free sample." Some of those can be legit, some can be malicious. So just gotta watch out for those. Downloading applications, unverified sources, cracked software, pirated content. Anytime you're downloading any application, documents, anything like that, there is the risk that there will be some malware internal to it. It just goes with the territory. If you don't do your research and don't know what you're getting into, that's where a lot of malware can get inside and infect your system. And then opening email attachments without verifying content or sender. This is what I was just talking about with those spam emails. If you don't know the sender, don't open them. It's one of the ways you can secure yourself from that side. If you don't know the sender, obviously, if they say they're a sender that you know, again, reach out to them, see if it's actually something that they sent you. And then the attackers have a very large selection of malware types to choose from, depending on what capability they want. Viruses, worms, malvertising, malicious advertising, remote access Trojans. This is if somebody's trying to get access to your computer remotely. They can go in, steal your data. They can do whatever they want. They would have full access to your system. Ransomware. This is a lot of times common where your computer can lock up. You wouldn't be able to do anything. You would get something popping up on your screen saying, send us money or else we're going to keep all your data, delete it, or do anything to it. And then spyware. This is a tricky way that's not seen a whole lot of times. This can be, they are keyloggers, so they're registering every keystroke that you're doing, or they can take a look at your camera and turn your camera on remotely, see what you're doing, what you look like. in person, just ways of spying on you to try and retain your data. The capabilities of malware include data destruction, encryption, theft, or combination of them all. If the hacker is highly skilled, they can go in and mess with the hardware in your system even. They can spin up a drive running so fast that it can fail, a bunch of different things. They can encrypt your data so you can't access it, only they can. Theft, stealing your data, anything to try and get information or take cover over your system. Mass replication or denial of service attacks. This is trying to prevent you from doing anything with your computer. A lot of times DDoS, they're trying to jam your network so you can't do anything with it. Password stealing, obviously, a big one. They get a hold of your password, they have access to any applications that you have. Hardware destruction, just talked about that earlier. Digital stalking, again, watching everything that you do, looking at you through the camera, key loggers, anything like that. Resource hijacking, such as crypto mining. So this is a big one that has been going along, getting more prevalent recently. Somebody can create a malicious software that can take over your computer, even when you're using it, and max out your GPU, CPU, any part of your computer. So it's terribly slow for you, but it benefits them because it could be mining cryptocurrency to go into their wallets. So got to be careful with those. Personal data collection and identity theft. This is they're trying to steal anything that they can from you, steal your social security number if you keep it saved in there somewhere, anything, personal information about you they can get access to. Recommendations, keep your software updated. This includes your operating system and applications. So what happens is when a new operating system version comes out or a new application comes out, there are users that are trying to gain access to figure out how to get through that application through a vulnerability and exploit it to get your data. So when updates come out, those are a lot of times patches for those vulnerabilities that are found. So it's very important to keep all your software, operating system, everything up to date. Use a non-admin account where possible. So when most users get an account or get a new computer, they set up their account, they log in, set up themselves up as the admin so they have control over everything. It's okay to do this, but you got to be careful because you have sole control over everything on that system from that admin account. It's good to use a non-admin account for most you're dealing with, no matter what website you're on or anything, just in case you go onto a cautious website and it tries to download something automatically. That can pop up a admin request. So you would have to sign in, sign your password and everything, just a way of keeping your computer more secure. Don't trust pop-up windows, especially those that say they have a virus or you need to download any software. This is what I was just talking about on the previous slide. You get a pop-up saying you are being watched, you need to send money here, anything like that. Don't trust it, don't do anything with the website. A lot of times shut your computer off immediately, take it to a place that can take a look at the system without letting the virus spread throughout. Use the antivirus software. Windows Defender is excellent for Windows computers. There are many other different options, but this is again that going to be that one thing that separates an easy way from getting into your computer versus no antivirus or anything like that. Be careful what links you click on, like in the phishing and spam email that you're sent. If you click on one of those links, that can automatically download some sort of malware to your computer, potentially. So you got to be very eyeful over whatever you're clicking on, downloading anything. If you hover over any link that you see, with Chrome that does this, in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see where the link will actually take you. Sometimes it can be to a valid website. If it has something suspicious in the URL, which Rebecca will talk about later, you got to be cautious and don't go to the website. Do not open email attachments if you are not specifically expecting them. Again, this is a way that malware can infect your system. If you go to open up a document that you're not 100% sure of, it can contain that malware. And then beware of browser add-ons. They can be helpful in some cases, such as ad blocking. However, previous instances of malicious add-ons have occurred. Stick with reputable, well-known add-ons. So if you're ever looking to get an add-on for like a password manager or anything like that, make sure you do your research on who you're going to be storing that information with, because if it has 2 5-star reviews, probably not the safest, probably hasn't been tested that much, versus if you go with something like LastPass or anything like that, thousands of star reviews, you can look through, do your research on the content itself, make sure you're keeping yourself safe from that aspect.
Okay, so this next piece, physical security, it doesn't seem like it would have that much relevance necessarily to information security, but believe it or not, physical security actually does hold a realm within information security and is quite detailed, in fact. So in this case, your computer really is no different than a home safe that you would have that wouldn't be bolted to the floor. Okay, if somebody was really intent on taking that safe from your home, all they'd have to do is just basically pick it up and they can take it with them. So they can be opened at their own pace with less chance of being caught, right? Okay, same thing with your computer. All right, consider your data is not safe unless your computer is physically safe. So some of the suggestions that we have here, protect your computer by ensuring that you always lock it if you step away from it for any reason. And by locking it, I'm referring to both the physical and the software methods. Okay, do not leave your computer logged in and open and then walk away. It gives an opportunity for somebody to immediately go to it and do whatever they want to do with it. Okay, use a strong password to access your computer. And definitely make use of the operating system encryption features. Nowadays, the operating systems all include some form of encryption for the hard drive, both Windows, Mac, and even including Linux. Linux will also do an encryption option. I know Linux isn't as popular, but the option is definitely there. Don't use USB drives of questionable origin and plugging them into your computer. This is a method of spreading malware. It's not as common because obviously it requires an investment up front on actual USB drives to be placed all over the place, hoping that someone will plug it in. But if you want to see an example of kind of how malware spreads from USB drives, look up Stuxnet. It's actually quite a fascinating example. For systems that hold critical data, don't use them in environments where it could damage the hardware, because that can also result in data loss. All right, you have to really kind of keep in mind physical security, just because it's not something most people immediately think of when you start talking about information, but it does hold that specific spot within that realm.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, so backup of data. There are lots of ways for your data to be corrupted. It can be deleted, overwritten, corrupt itself. One of the most important actions to take is to back up your data often. It can be backed up many different ways. Cloud storage services. These are great options like OneDrive or Google Drive, Dropbox, anything like that. You got to remember that these are just stored on someone else's computer though. So you have to make sure that they are stored with a reputable source. Offline storage, this would be USB drives, DVD drive, or DVDs or other offline media. So like an external hard drive. Great to keep an external hard drive with all your information that's not connected to your computer, because these can, if it's connected to your computer, there's the potential of somebody getting access to it. Network drive, this is going to be a drive that is accessed over the network. You say you have a external hard drive that's connected to your network, you can go and drop files in there separated from your computer. And then consider encryption of your data, just as you would encrypt the data that is transmitted somewhere else. These are numerous software options, including open source, that can provide adequate encryption of your stored data. As usual, ensure the key is ensure the key you use to access the data is strong and stored somewhere where it is not going to get lost. So if you lose access to that key, you're not going to be able to access any of your data and you're out of luck. You would have to send your drives in or anything in to get professionally decrypted.
It's expensive.
Very expensive.
Put it that way. It's just better to keep the safe key, someplace where you know it is, for sure. All right, so as promised, I did mention we are going to start talking a little bit about URLs. One of the most critical things you can understand about safely using these internet resources is understanding where those resources reside on the internet and paying attention to where you may be redirected. So the next portion is a little technical, hence the little picture of confused kitty there. But it is important that you understand at a basic level just what exactly URLs are and how they function, okay? We all know the acronym URL. It stands for Uniform Resource Locator. Why? I don't know. I don't know who created it, and I'm not exactly sure why they have an acronym for it. But really, it's nothing more than a complex way to say address. It's fairly simple in that regard. All right. So amongst all the internet connected servers and endpoints, there's this reliance on addresses. Just like in a city, for the internet, everything is reliant on a system of numbers. And you'll probably recognize IP addresses. It's just a series of numbers. It's not very helpful for people looking at those numbers to understand where exactly something is going. Okay, so this system for how addressing works, just have to understand that when you put a URL into your browser bar, it gets sent to a system called DNS, which then translates it to numbers for a computer to understand. Then that computer, so the DNS computer, will take that series of numbers, look up on a table, and determine where it needs to send that request next. So it bounces it around between servers around the world until it reaches its destination, which is hopefully where you intended it to go. And of course, the server that received that request then responds, reverses the process, sends the data back to your computer, where your browser then interprets it and presents a web page to you. Now, what is important about understanding domains? One single character off could send you on a totally different direction. All right, it will refer to a totally different IP address. It could be nothing, it could be something. The fact of the matter is that if you make one little character goof, the computer is going to do exactly what you ask it to do. And it's going to look up whatever that destination is and send it on its way. So you just have to understand that's the process and kind of how it works. Now, we want to understand how to take apart a URL. So when we were talking about hovering over a destination, it shows you exactly where it's supposed to go. Well, that's what I have here, right? So the domain is always the segment between the : / and of course the next slash. Now this first one here, http://freediscoball.net. Well, you'll notice there's no trailing slash at the end. It doesn't have to be. You just know the entry there in red, that's the domain. For example, the next one, HTTPS. So the S in the HTTP means it's secure. So you have a secure connection. All right, this is a scam.clickhere.org. Well, that last little portion in red, that's the domain. That's the actual location. All right. This next one, the complicated one, all the jumbled letters and characters, .site, that is a valid, that would be classified as a valid domain. If there was a web page that was at that domain, you would find, I'm assuming, terrific deals on cheese puffs, like it says. And of course, the last one, I threw that one in, http://www.wsu.edu.main-site.net / definitely a scam. I included that one on purpose because there are times when someone who's trying to impersonate a WSU address, a destination, they may try and put that in there in the hopes that you'll see the wsu.edu and just look elsewhere. But you can't. You've got to look for that first slash, on the end after the domain name to really identify where it is that you're going. All right. You have to maintain situational awareness when you're exploring the internet. All right. Beware of links that do not show the destination clearly. Like I talked about, you see an IP address, it's a series of numbers. The computer understands precisely where that goes, you won't. So please beware of those. If you know that is the IP address you're supposed to go to, okay, then great. But if you don't, I would beware. All right. We will often see appropriation of popular brands like Google. So google.com, google-search.com. They're not the same thing and they won't take you to the same area. Shortened URLs, it's really just a way of disguising where the actual destination is going. So in this case, Bitly, which is quite popular, they take it to shorten URLs, so it's essentially less cumbersome. You might see things like character swaps. So in this case, Wix.com, which is a fairly popular web hosting site. Well, if you look at the text closely that I have on that slide right there, that is not Wix.com, that is VVIX.com, but our brains don't necessarily interpret that. It's because of the font. All right. As I put in red and bold there, please be supremely cautious when you are off-roading on the internet.
All right, then social media. Social media is ever prevalent in today's society, and they're more and more coming out as we speak. So knowing how to handle yourself in these with these services is ever prevalent. A couple things: don't download or install any software originating from social media network sites or pop-ups. This is a way that hackers can get access to the app that is being downloaded onto your system. So if you see an ad for an application that you're interested in, go to the website itself, download it from there. That way you know you're getting it from the source itself. Do your research on it, of course. Just make sure you know what you're downloading. Assume that your privacy protection doesn't exist. Adopt the mentality that all posts are public. If you post anything on the internet, it can be viewed by anybody. It doesn't really matter. If you post on Facebook and Facebook gets hacked, they will have access to all your information. There's nothing that makes it specifically private if you put yourself in a private mode. Don't accept friend requests from people you don't know. Obvious one there, but don't accept friend requests from some people that you do know. It could be somebody posing as your grandmother on Facebook trying to send you a friend request or anything like that. Make sure that it's actually the person that you do know, that they're sending you the friend request or anything like that. And then be very wary of unusual posts coming from connections. This is, you can see it a lot in like Instagram posts. They say, oh my goodness, click on this link and look at this video. Can you believe they did this? Something seems a little fishy there. So you may want to send a message to whoever posted that and ask if it's actually something that they posted or if it's something their account got hacked or anything like that. And then just some final pieces in today's presentation. Consider using an ad blocker when you engage in the exploration of the digital world. So ad blockers will prevent any of those potentially malicious pop-ups from coming on your computer. There are pop-ups just with Chrome itself that can take over your entire computer. So those ad blockers can help prevent some of those. Incognito and private browsing mode. There are some advantages and disadvantages. Advantages: prevents cookies from remaining in your system, doesn't save your history, generally gives you a warm feeling of assurance that the next user of the computer won't see where you went, what you did. Essentially, your information can still, or wouldn't necessarily get stored on the computer, but cookies and anything like that can. Or cookies can if you're not using it. Disadvantages: data is still passed through your ISP and is still logged. So even if it's not on your computer directly, it is still logged through your internet service provider. Websites still identify you by your login, your location, anything that you have active on your computer there. VPN usage. This creates encrypted connections between you and your online destination. Intermediaries will be unable to read the traffic between those points. Good to use whenever possible. WSU does have a VPN. It's vpn.wsu.edu. It is great to use this if you're accessing specific websites by the university or anything like that, because it's that secure connection between your computer and WSU's network. So good to use that whenever possible. It may not be the best if you're doing any video classes or anything like that, because it can throttle down your network. And then AI chat services. Do not put private information in these. They are AI, it can be computer generated, but you still would be giving any of your information over to the owner of that AI chatbot, anything like that. So you got to be very careful. Don't put any private information, anything like that in any AI chat service. All right, do we have any questions, comments, concerns, anything?
Well, I saw a lot of questions in the chat, and I really would like to get as many of them as I can, but I understand we only have about 5 minutes left, so let's try and hit these as quickly as we can. So one of the first ones that I see is there a recommended password manager? We're not supposed to officially endorse any specific password manager. I can tell you that some of the ones that I've used personally in the past are LastPass and Bitwarden. They both have been really good, but there are others out there like 1Password, Dashlane, KeePass. KeePass is kind of unique in that it only stores the data on your local computer. It's not networked and it does not share across with your phone. So if that's something you absolutely have to have, KeePass probably won't help you. I would definitely say do a Google search and look up the whole host of different ones that are out there and kind of find out which one's going to work best for you. Let's see, question about passwords. Do you recommend using a password generator? Yes. in simple terms, password generators kind of create kind of a random series. You're less likely to get something that might be guessed when it's just a random string. Most like password managers come with a generator of some sort, and you can tell it how long you want it, whether or not you want it to include special characters or uppercase numbers, things like that. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to have some really complex passwords, and that's a good way to get them.
The one thing you do have to be cautious about, though, is if you are going to a different computer or anything and you use a password manager and a randomly generated password, you got to make sure that you know that randomly generated password by heart, because you're going to have a difficult time getting into it once you're on a new system or anything else.
Unless it's synced with your phone, which
unless it's synced with your phone.
Yeah, there are some that have apps that syncs with your phone. So what's your opinion on the built-in password manager web browsers have? My personal opinion, they're bad. I do not recommend people use them. They have gotten better over the years, but the trouble is that they're not as secure, I think, as they should be. That's my personal thought. I don't know, Dylan, if you've had more experience with those or not, I don't know. But in my mind, I don't like them.
So they can be helpful. They're not the greatest. Again, so if we're ever talking about softwares, if you download or use a free software and a browser or anything like that, if it's free, then you are the product. So they have access to your information through that. So you just got to be careful as like what browser you're using or anything like that. I'm right there with you, Rebecca. I don't like using the Google password manager or anything like that. They haven't shined the brightest for me. So
here's another one. What do you recommend people do if they do realize they have malware on their computer, and is there a way they can get rid of it? Go for it, Dolan. Take it away.
So if you do sense that you have malware on your computer, the number one thing, if you're not technically savvy or anything like that, take it to a computer repair shop and let them know what's happening with your system. A lot of times, if the malware is too bad that it's infected deep into your operating system, what can happen is they can do a data backup and restore and complete operating system reinstall. So they can back up the data that is pertinent to you, documents, pictures, anything like that. Make sure that there's nothing fishy going on with the code for the operating system. Install a fresh set of Windows, Mac OS, anything like that, and then download just specifically your data back onto the new computer. If you're even cautious about it or think that you have malware on your computer, if you do try some different like malware detection services, Malwarebytes, or any antivirus, some of those can search through your computer, scan for any files that may contain malware, and they can do a quarantine, but you would still need to get rid of that software or that malware as quick as possible.
And I think something that's important to point out with that particular question as well is understanding that, the slide that we had put up, what you talked about before, having backups. It is very important that you maintain backups of critical data. Because if you do get hit with malware, there's a good chance you're probably going to have corrupted data, in which case you could lose the information that you had, even if you get it all cleaned up and get the system all reset. So, just another plug, keep the data backed up, you're good to go. All right.
Multiple backups are good too. just in
Exactly.
case.
Yeah.
We've had instances here where a user would have their system fail, the hard drive failed or anything like that. They have a little spinning hard drive, external hard drive that they dropped. If you drop a spinning hard drive, like you can feel it spin, that can do damage to the disk and you can lose your data that way too. So it's good to keep not just one, but multiple backups for your data.
No, but nobody likes a hard drive head crash.
No, no.
Let's see. Do people still use DVDs? Oh, that makes me feel a little bit older. Yes, I still use DVDs. Strangely enough, I have a DVD burner in the home system. But yes, people do still use them. I figured I would answer that question because yes, they still exist. Maybe not as much as they used to, but they do. And then, of course, the last question I think we have time for. I love VPN, but they cost money. Are there any free ones? I think this kind of goes right along with the same line of thinking that we were looking at before. We can't really endorse any. There are free ones out there, but the disclaimer with VPNs is understand that once you go through a VPN, the VPN owner still has the ability to see traffic passing through. So it's got to be a VPN you trust, rather than just automatically defaulting to because it's free, it's encrypted. Well, that's only true to a certain point. So as with everything, like we said, please be careful with where you send your data, how you send your data, and how you protect it. In general, stay suspicious, stay alert, and you should do okay. That's really all the time that we have. As we have at the bottom of this slide right here where it says important contact information. It is important that you kind of keep that information handy because that's where you're going to be able to get answers. So for example, the Information Security Services website has a lot of resources. The email to report security issues, phishing or spam emails, like I said before, abuse@wsu.edu goes to my team. There's the Crimson Service Desk website that also has a whole bunch of resources to work with. And of course, the Crimson Service Desk email where you can get numerous answers on all kinds of computing topics. And all of this stuff generally works pretty fast. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of those resources.
All right. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Rebecca and Zolan. And thank you everyone who attended and everybody who may be watching this in the future.
You're very welcome.
And thank you for having us.
Yeah.